Whoop whoop. Okay. Then, as the head honcho of this ragtag duo, I believe the introduction is to you, Mother Mine.
Well, this is unblocking your creative blocks. We live as we learn. We are creatively blocked, and we're trying to unblock ourselves. So, when, how, and where was your first creative block? What happened? Tell me everything.
Okay. Uh, I think my first real creative block was, I think I must have been like 16, 17, something like that. Because, like, especially growing up, I've always been like really bustling with ideas, and like I had a lot of energy in general. So it was really difficult to really get me to stick with anything. But also, I could stick by them quite a lot, actually, now that I think about it. It's a bit rambly. What I'm saying is, I think I really had my first creative block about the same time I had my first burnout uh, in general. Less because of difficulties with creativity itself, though, of course, that would also take a bit of a back seat. But I think for me, my blocks have mostly been about like either depressive episodes uh, or just that things around the creativity did not really work out. That would actually drain a lot of the industriousness that you can sort of pull out, like the willingness to work rather than
Mirrored.
uh, a fault in not having a strong imagination.
So, what did you do then? How did you get out of it? I made it like crazy, so it doesn't really
My end to sort of combat mm, like creative ruts has definitely partially just been taking care of myself, I guess, because like my natural mode of being is creativity. Uh, and there is sort of like a push and pull at the same time, because I know that a lot of my creativity is based in reality escape. So the more pressing things I have around me, the more I just want to sort of like jump into something else. While too much of that will cause me to just sort of like collapse and not be able to really do anything. And I will mostly just sit down and try to make something, and I will hate everything that comes out of my brain, and I will just be filled with a bunch of like self-contempt, go and cry a little bit, gain 5 pounds from eating ice cream, and then wash, rinse, repeat, or wash out, rinse, repeat. um, no, but I think really for me it's been like a push and pull of uh, creativity and the industriousness of escaping from a very dour reality you don't really like. So my biggest motivator when I was a bit younger, when I was still attending school, was uh, that sort of in order to feel like I'm not wasting my life just going to classes and doing my thing and just sort of like, going along, then I thought, so that I don't have to live in sort of like this world that is sort of painted up for me, I will use all my resting hours to build on something that will take me out of that bubble. And so I was at my absolute peak creativity when I actually didn't have time to be. So, uh, like when I tried to do my YouTube channel, for example, I was juggling that at the same time as trying to make a game, at the same time as I was trying to write a novel. And like the videos themselves were like 30 hours per video of just editing and like a bunch of general bullshit.
weren't you
Hmm?
working also at this time?
Oh, did I? Like my memory melds. I don't think I actually had a job when I was in high school. Uh,
Oh, this wasn't. Yeah.
yes, this was like when I was still at art
Had
high
school,
school.
a novel, a game, and your YouTube channel.
Yes. Uh, And all of it was because I hated school so enormously that I could just sort of like, okay, I'm just gonna let this run in the background while I, consider what I'm gonna do for my next episode. Because it was a bunch of character analyses from a show I really liked.
Uh,
Uh,
what you're saying, as far as my first creative block, it resonates. For me, it was having a lot of pressure put on me.
mm,
Um, because whenever I showed, I eventually stopped doing that. Whenever I
mm,
showed my family something that I had made, they immediately said, and with they, I mean my father and my brother,
mm,
oh, you could make money doing that. Produce
mm.
20,000 of that and make money.
Yeah,
When you have
yeah,
50,000, I want to borrow five. That was like the standard response my brother always gave me.
yeah.
And you know how I grew up. My big brother was like a dad to me. So
Mm,
so he had that, father figure vibe.
yeah, sure. I get you.
And it was very, very difficult for me to say no to him and to tell him
Mm,
that he was wrong about anything. And I felt so like immediately choked,
mm.
and I couldn't create anything anymore because now I had this pressure that I had to make 50,000 krona off of it. Because
Yeah, like 100%. I mean, from my end too, it's really been a thing of like, I mean, because you know me, like I have tried to like start small companies and do like a bunch of like industrial shit, and then it's sort of just fallen on top of itself because of like all the extra bullshit around what you're doing.
yeah,
That would sort of like it kills creativity, it kills the fun of it, and then it just sort of like, okay, I wanted to escape a dreary world of paperwork, but I've done so into a dreary world of paperwork where I'm also expected to be creative at the same time.
yeah.
So it's like,
Always so many
it,
things to do, and most of them are really dull.
yeah, as Marie Kondo says, it does not spark joy.
No,
Uh,
here's
and
here's an
hmm?
idea for Idea Corner.
Hmm?
Shit, I have to stop calling it corner. What do we do call it? An idea spitball. Here's an idea spitball. Patrons, not
Hmm?
Patreon, but patrons, and these are
Hmm?
people that do the work around the creativity.
Hmm?
You should have like a dating app that puts together accountants with
Hmm?
creative people. So you have one that can do all the paperwork and one that can do all the creative stuff. And together they create something awesome.
That is actually like now you say it, that would actually be such a godsend to Excel jockeys. Like if you really think about it, like these are people who do not get out a lot. They will not have a lot of game because like what girl really usually, or guy, I guess, though demographics, like how many girls are like, oh wow, you can do differential equations, it's or like whatever you need, like, but at the same time, if you have someone who's like, okay, I have the thing I want to do, and I desperately need someone to do the numbers thingies. Please and thank you. uh,
Is it just bringing people together that
yeah.
normally wouldn't meet because they don't move in the same circles? Like my sister, your auntie, the accountant, I
Mm,
took her to one of my hangouts once where, the artist creative types. And she was like wrinkling her nose outside the club first. Oh, it wasn't a club, it was a pub. And she was
mm,
like, oh, you go here. And I said, yeah, all the cool people go. And she was like, okay, because she's an accountant. She doesn't go to
mm.
places where painters and other,
Yeah, of course. Like,
types hang
I think also like with the advent of just like more and more like personally specialized technology, you have less and less and less reason at any time to even talk to your neighbor. Like, you don't even necessarily have to talk to people inside your own field if they are looking at just a slightly different genre. Like, you can go your whole life ignoring someone who is like millimeters away from you, like an actual reality in that sense.
Yeah,
Uh,
Yeah.
So yeah,
Illustration from real life. Your baby sister just started a new job, and she, 1 week in, realizes that her new friends that she's never knows a lot of people that she knows.
hmm.
She realized this when she started to follow them on Insta.
Yeah, which is insane. Though actually not that crazy, considering that it's a pretty local job. So the people she's met, of course, are locals.
So
Uh, yeah,
local jokes to get local work. Uh, so that she has actually been moving in the same circles as these people before.
yeah,
She never knew them. That's what I mean. It's like a digital deserts with little oases in them. We need to have
yeah.
caravans that connects these oases.
Yeah, it's actually like really ironic when you think about it that I mean, not to go on too much of a tangent, but this is, it's relevant. Where it's like, city life is actually some of the most insular living you can have, while rural, while technically being a lot more separate physically, rural people tend to know each other much better because that's just part of the culture. Like
They
you
have,
kind of have to.
they have community out there. Says me who grew up in a village where everybody knows all the time. Because you're, and this was also before cell phones, and people actually had to usually go outside to have fun.
Yeah. Oh yeah. 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 Like who goes out to have fun now? Pff, squares. That's who. No, actually, to be fair, like cool nerds that I wish I was part of, but like people who wish they were cool nerds, they hang out inside and play Mario Kart. Maybe take a skating round or something.
Also, you can't go out and meet people because there are so many psychopaths out there.
Oh yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Don't go into the forest, baby girl. Sweet baby angel. Sorry. Um,
No, cut that out. Steven, cut that. Oh, well, yeah. So that was our first creative block. Maybe I should say also how I got out of it and how I have
sure.
gotten out of every single creative block I've ever been in by starting to do something else creatively. Uh, the first one was music, and my way of dealing with that creative block was childishly putting away my flute and not playing it even once for 12 years. By the time I took it out again, it was broken. So actually, now
Mm,
I need to repair it for more money than it's worth if I ever want to play it again.
there
Yeah.
is that.
So that was pretty childish, but that's how I solved that by just never doing it ever again and immersing myself in other ways of being.
It's sort of like with this to like get out of a creative block is sort of like saying, hey, like I can't get into my house anymore, so I'm just not gonna want to go into my house anymore.
No, I'll just
Solved it. I'm no longer blocked.
my key somewhere. I'm just gonna go live someplace else now.
Yeah, like I'll just go be homeless. Like that's
Maybe I want to live under a bridge. It's in fucking San Francisco.
yeah, yeah, San Francisco, yes, of course.
That's
Or
where
you can visit me in Yotkyo.
I'm
Uh, um,
always sunset. No, but I mean, I tried. Well, I started singing instead. That's when I started singing instead of playing my instrument.
hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a very, very good strategy. I read a book recently, and when I say read, I mean listen to an audible version because I'm a lazy bastard. Uh, I listened to an audio version of Range by his last name is Epstein, but don't hold it against him. Uh, I think. But it was really really interesting in that he the author did a lot of checked out a lot of studies and sort of like sampled the best people in their fields, and he found that most of them, except for specific kinds of specialties like chess masters and things. Like most of them are jacks of all trades who eventually landed later in life at the thing they then specialized in,
Hmm.
because it was sort of shown that you have a lot easier time both grasping and being creative within a field that you haven't completely specialized in. Because, for example, there are uh, Van Gogh, for example, as just an example. He did so many odd jobs. Like he started out trying to be a reverend, like a pastor, and when that failed, he basically tried every single art style
He failed being a reverend.
because he was a bit crazy.
No, because he was a bit perverted. He couldn't.
Ah, sure. Like a severe ear fetish. That's I mean, one would assume. So I will always listen to you, dear. It's a drip, drip, drip. Um,
Got one of his parishioners' daughter pregnant, and it was yeah.
so
What I've
private consultation.
was that he was actually recognized in his lifetime. He was just not financially successful yet,
Yeah.
but he was the painter's painter. So if he had just stuck it out for another year, he would have been
Enormous.
enormous. Like what's his face with the water lilies? Is it
Oh
Renoir?
God.
No, Monet. I'm thinking of Monet. He was just on the cusp of becoming one of these giants.
Mm.
Passed away. But yes, and I've seen some of his early artworks. Very, very different. So it took years for him to find his style.
Oh yeah, and as it goes, every time he found a new style, he would praise it to the heavens and say, "This is the only ultimate form of art." And as soon as he found out he sucked at it, he said, "No, it's garbage. This is the new highest form of art." Until he found the thing that worked for him, and then he was, then it just stuck because he was good at it.
He
um,
actually hated A Starry Night. He
yeah.
thought it was rubbish himself, and that is like his most famous artwork now. But he
Oh
didn't.
yeah, I love Starry Night.
Yeah,
Like yeah, it's like legitimately beautiful. Like a lot of art, kind of shit, but Starry Night, pretty good. Um,
the background next time.
oh yeah, yeah, oh definitely yes.
Our favorite piece of art. Okay.
But so yeah, the thing with range, the book,
Hmm.
was that it pointed out very much that most of the people who were really good in their fields, like there was, geez, because there are like two schools of thought. There's the Tiger Woods,
Mm,
which is hyper focus on something from the time you're like 2 years old, which works for chess and sometimes golf. But was Federer a golfer or was he a tennis player? I don't even remember.
Dennis Federer.
Tennis, yeah. Because he had he'd played soccer and like a lot of stuff all the way up until then, and he only really stuck with tennis, I think, in like late teens or early 20s.
Yeah, that's
And he was dominating the field simply because he had such a good grasp of sport in general. Like it wasn't just that. Hmm?
a lot of professional athletes actually didn't decide what sport they were going to do until they were 13.
Yeah.
They have spoken out against this elite school thing that we have, at least here in Sweden. If you haven't been joined to a really good club by the time you're 8 years old, you can give up your dream of ever becoming a sports star.
Which is
That's how
stupid.
it is. And he wrote a scathing article. I think he was a football
Mm.
player, a real baller. Uh, why do you want someone who peaked when they were 6?
Oh yeah, sure. Uh,
You really ought to be casting a wider net because it's really dumb. and it's hurting the sport, any sport. And here's what I was talking about with patrons, that we should bring
Mm,
patrons back. In a lot of solo sports, where you think that it is the individual that's doing a lot of stuff and they were just a great genius on their own, actually, it
mm,
turns out that they have a lot of people around them that are helping them. And not always just the people that you would expect, like a coach or a therapist or a life coach or something like that, but actually someone other that's helping them along, like Van Gogh and his brother Theo,
mm,
the Olympic skater Michelle Kwan. Her greatest support and fan was her sister, who was like a year older and although talented, not quite as talented as her sister. And when she realized
mm.
that, she became her Michelle's number one support system and fan. And the press was always trying to make it drama. Oh, they're competing, but it was never like that. She was helping her sister get along.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's sort of this thing where like no man and or woman is an island, um, and I think we really we sort of buy into the the great like the great person myth a lot of the time because like for example Steve Jobs, really good businessman, he would never have invented that if he didn't like put some real thumb screws to a lot of engineers saying this will be created because I saw it in a dream, so make it or be fired, and that's how it worked out because he was really good at psychology, but he would never have been able to create it himself.
Oh,
Bill Gates, businessman. Wozniak made most of the like actual, um, and like Wozniak would probably never have been able to launch, what they made together quite as well because he didn't have that acumen. Uh, yeah,
which is
no, exactly. Like you need a charismatic frontman,
yeah,
regardless of like who actually helms it per se. Like,
that's another thing. Oh my god, this should spitball should be called Jenny explains things. And I didn't invent this myself. I think I first read about it in Malcolm Gladwell's something,
mm,
that to get ahead in any field at all, you have to be an expert at a lot of other things.
yes,
Doesn't actually have anything to do with the thing that you're doing.
indeed,
Like, what was the example he used? Law school. If you want to become a Supreme Court judge, you have to first be very good at a lot of things that you don't need to be a judge in order to
yes.
even get in the door.
Yeah, because you need to qualify with a completely different skill set.
Yeah,
And then when you're there, you're doing completely different work.
yeah, yeah.
So it's complete redundancy.
And
Yeah.
yeah, this thing, you're promoted until you no longer, until you suck so badly at what you,
Yes.
but
That you must be demoted
when,
or fired.
or yeah, or stay at the position where you're doing a bad job.
Yeah.
That's the only thing that we in our current system, this is why we should use Bellemism instead of our current system. The only way to reward somebody is to make them a boss of something and give them more money, even though they are
Mm.
now doing things that they were not good at, or at least not as good as they were before. But if you don't promote them,
Mm.
they're going to start working someplace else where they can be promoted because everybody wants to be promoted to that next tier, even if they are
Yeah.
working with things that they're not good at.
So, without veering too much into like, economics and politics and, things like that,
Yeah.
there is, at once like a very good point you make where like, the reward doesn't really fit the work.
No.
uh, though there is sort of this gray line or sort of just something that sort of just like spits in everybody's cereal, which is that it may be that regardless of how well you do a certain job, it is actually impossible to, you know, up to a certain point, I would say. Uh, you can't only like increase um, salary, for example, necessarily, if the work you produce only goes up to a certain level. Because if you gave them as much back as they produced, then it would be a net
Loss.
loss or zero. Basically, it's you know, it takes up paperwork basically. So what I think the logic sometimes is when they put them in a more important position and then raise the salary, is that at least in theory, that position uh, would in and of itself generate more worth or value rather. But the problem is exactly what you say, that uh, they will do a worse job there and not even necessarily produce at all as much value as they did as a pseudo grunt. So really, I think what you need to do is actually create and foster a very good like internal culture of honor. I think like
Yeah.
if you give people an incentive that is a lot more, you know, based in esteem, then
Yeah.
I think that would pull you forward a lot, because that's also what a lot of leadership science says, that you know, you will generally have a much more productive. Oh, yeah, go ahead.
This circles back to what I was saying about creative people need
Mhm.
to be paired up with people who are able to do good work around. Because what happens if you start a business based on your creative idea? If
Yeah,
you're one of the CEOs, you will be doing very little creativity. You
very
will
much so. Yes.
a lot of other things that is not so much fun. And you are going to be the
Mm.
crazy person that comes in and says, "I have had this wild idea. Let's let's stop doing sunglasses and let's start doing polka dot socks instead because that's so much fun." And everyone is going,
Or,
"Oh,
yeah,
we've built this entire business on the sunglasses, so I don't think."
let's keep that infrastructure. Yeah.
What usually happens is that someone will buy this crazy creative guy out. So crazy creative guy can now start working on something else and let
Yeah,
their baby and maybe their next idea will not be as successful as their first idea. And
it
but
might still be
follow
moderately successful.
have yeah, like these stories like, oh, he started this company and then he was ousted out and now he has nothing. Boo hoo.
Yeah, that is actually sort of a thing where I think it's like that is something you hear a lot. Like this, like creative pioneer of a person creates a company and they have their ideas, and then they're just, you know, ousted by the board of directors
Yeah.
because they could, you know, they at least believe they would be able to run the company better. And I think on a lot of levels that is probably true, in that they could probably run the business from there. While it's really good to have that pioneer up until you have like a couple hundred employees, and
Yeah.
after that you need actual corporate people to manage that, because it's a completely different skill set.
Yes.
Uh,
That's that totally and talents. This creative
mm,
person will be really, really depressed and drained, not being able to be creative and invent stuff anymore.
yeah,
If there is a structure for this creative person to continue to be inventive and do things. But the bean counters, they don't want creativity. They
no,
don't
yeah,
want talent. They
because they want provable, like repeatable numbers,
prove
and that's what you want. So that's why you have Hollywood, where you have this like huge formula of, if you don't have this on the 13th page, we know you are not one for us,
that.
because we know that that 13th page means zero point 0.3 extra in the uh,
And this is what
ratings.
everything is so
Yeah,
formulaic.
yeah.
And you have been a movie and TV aficionado for longer than you have been alive, my dear.
Hmm.
And so has my husband. We sit watching shows and saying, "Now this is going to happen. How much you want to bet that that is going to happen right now?"
It does indeed happen. Yeah.
Most of the time, yeah. This is why we love Netflix and HBO because these shows break the mold occasionally.
Occasionally, yes.
So we're like,
Uh,
some guy professes his love for his girlfriend, and he says, "I'm just gonna go do this thing, and then we're gonna get married." And then you're like, "Nope, he's not coming home from that." Um,
yeah.
you always have to up the ante, and you just know that there are for extra dramatic effect, someone's gonna die,
Mm.
and we just sit and wait for this.
Yeah, it's sort of like what was I thinking? Yeah, because like I have the same thing where like when I used to go to like watch Marvel movies with friends,
Mm.
uh, I would be like I would just lean into their ear. This would be the first time I see it, by the way, and I would just lean in and say, "She's gonna betray him," and he's like, "What? What? Why?" It was a You'll see. So, like, so you just uh, like without fail, I would usually be able to just like lean into my friend's ear and say, okay, this is how this movie is going to end, or like this is where this character plot is going to go, and
And I
they're honestly surprised, and I'm like, no, it's like it's really not that difficult to science. It's you know
uh,
mm,
there was this character introduced at a show that I'm watching with your little sister, and I was like,
mm,
I think that guy is the next hero because of how he was introduced. And she was like, "What, really?" Like, yeah, that's exactly how they introduced the new hero. So
mm.
he's the new main character. You'll see. Yeah,
Yeah, it's a thing.
the thing. No, maybe I should go on a tangent. But you said something about a game, so therefore I'm gonna segue with a game. I
Sure.
jumped into a game series, playing the second installment before I'd even heard of the first. And the game was very much made for the people that had played the first game.
Hmm.
And I could immediately tell by the first appearance of a certain character that this is someone who is really important. And they did really turn out to be one of my favorite characters. And then I played the first game after this, actually after the third,
Hmm.
when he's introduced and the friendship grows, and you're like, oh, now I understand why he was given such a hero introduction,
Hmm.
because he's best waifu. And that was all I was going to say about that. So your game idea,
Hmm.
tell me, why do we need this?
Sure. Yeah. So, as far as like game ideas go, this was something that I've always really wanted, because like I think there is like either it's just me or it is a niche that isn't really satisfied enough, and I think that is just sort of this like uh, I would call it social sim in a way, where it's like uh, my favorite games really ever have been games where it really feels like I can interact with the NPCs in a good way. Like, you really have this like mm, it's very similar to the
Can I say this about NPCs?
sure.
I hate it when they have like random lines that they always say
Yes.
whenever I talk to them. It's better that they don't talk at all. If they just have
100%. It destroys immersion. Like, I am not the kind of person who goes around in like RPGs and looks for the one line, because it will just be like, this is thinly veiled exposition.
yeah, but when it's like, I've been playing Fallout 4 like crazy because I'm
Hmm.
platinum. And the when you come to a settlement and everything is fine, one of your settlements and everything is fine, someone will walk up to you and say, I have to get back to Diamond City, biggest city I ever saw.
Hmm.
Uh, then you know that everything is good in this place. You don't have to fix anything, and I can just move on. I don't have to repair anything. I don't have to build more defenses. I don't have to give
Yeah.
work. It's
It's like the bandits in the mountains are really bad. I hope someone takes care of it. So, the mountains took my goat. No, not the mountains. The bandits in the mountains took my goat. This town is called Selena, and this, it was created 300 years ago when we escaped from bandits. It's just, and it's just it's the one line, or it's yeah, like, it's annoying, and it's like I
three, and you're riding through this village full of refugees, and there's this
yeah.
sitting there on a rock. War never changes.
Neither do your lines, bub. Uh, yeah,
That
it's
was really funny. Like this little in joke that you only get if you play a lot of games. I think it's
yeah, yeah, because lines never change. uh,
yeah.
yeah, because it's like it's self-referential and it's kind of lazy. You know, a lot of like this is the thing I just heard like from an interview with a game developer who said like one thing he actually finds kind of annoying with a lot of writers in the game industry and just in general is the self-referential stuff of it all. I think Hayao Miyazaki, the Studio Ghibli pioneer, you know, apropos, um, you know, creators uh, later maybe regretting being so far up, I guess.
Yeah,
Yeah,
creative.
because like everything sort of just like references what they had in like the 70s or 80s or 90s or who like whatever what was their like golden age of whatever. Like it will just be a lot of references and there isn't this like I'm gonna create my own thing usually. Like a lot of it is okay. This is something I really liked from that thing, so I'm gonna put it in this. Yes,
Yeah,
and
wasn't it a game that was like in development hell for 12 years because the developer wanted to put everything new that he found in it. So they had
oh,
to
that's fully possible. Do you remember the contents?
one of these terrible first-person shooters that I would never play anyway. But I
Hmm.
heard about it on both outside Xbox and PlayStation Access, two channels.
Hmm.
Uh, yeah, and the joke became, let's not show Mr. Bossman any new games. Let's not let him see anything because he's gonna want to put it in our.
Oh,
And it took something like 12 years and changing out the director to finally get out a game, and it was horrible because he was trying to be 20 things at the time.
too many. It's not even too many cooks. It's just sort of like too many scatterbrain ideas.
Yeah, I hate.
Too many memes. Too many memes. There we go.
Yeah,
Uh,
no, but I actually hate that when it's trying to be too many things at once. You have to
mm.
dial it down a little bit, I think, for it to really work.
Yeah, but so just to sort of like tie that to what I was talking about, like game idea wise, it's sort of just like I think there is something uh, because like you know a lot of the time when people play like you know these like social things, they want to play games with other people. I don't want to do that. Like, I don't want to hang out with people on the internet because people on the internet are fucking assholes. Like, yeah, like half, like some of the time you will meet like a really nice person, but even then there is this like very, very separated like community, or just like you know the way you're human with someone. Let's just look at any like comment section on any video on YouTube or wherever, really, because like you know to the other person you're not quite human and I'm not really like that. Like I really hate it when it's just like the norm to be like enormously trolly and rude to people. Like I've never like I hate being like the outraged you know thin-skinned guy because
I
it's just annoying.
have
But
one thing,
mm,
then I'm gonna let you get on. I think a lot of these multiplayer games where people are rude and it's sort of allowed in the culture of the game for you to be rude. I think this
mm.
is a part of the escapism that you
Oh
have to
yes,
be so polite and pleasant in your work day.
yes,
You know this trend
yes,
comes from
definitely.
Japan. You know this trend comes from Japan. This is their escape power fantasy. I can be an asshole online because as a contrast to how pleasant I have to be in real life.
I'm sure there's an element of Japan, but I will actually say that this is like a more global thing,
Yeah,
like everywhere.
where where did these multiplayer games start then? Where did this culture come from?
Well, I think,
Because
I
it's the
mean,
norm that you have to be terrible to everyone that you meet online.
well, I think like really, I would say toxic internet culture predates games. I think because before games were made to be like online, you could actually like interact that way. You still had comment sections, you still had like the internet.
Yeah,
So if we're talking,
I think we're talking about two different things. I
okay,
games culture where someone over leveled goes on
hmm.
your camp and kills everyone because they can, and then you can go, "Mwah."
Oh yeah, yeah, that's just that happens.
That
Like
happens.
that is, I would say that that is part of human, like, low status man behavior,
Yeah, but you
regardless of culture.
don't see people doing that. They don't go into a kindergarten and start bashing people, children.
Well, no. Uh,
But it is perfectly allowed in the internet multiplayer game of doing the equivalent of finding someone that's level 1 and go and
yeah,
push them when you're level 15. And
yeah,
that's
yeah, sure.
that happens. It's normal human behavior. No, it actually isn't. That's psychopathy.
Yes, but the only thing I'm really saying here is I don't think it's specifically like out of Japan. Like I think this is like,
My take on it, like if it's escapism, and you've talked about this power fantasy manga, like I escaped the world and now I'm a king and I can do everything I want.
oh, sure, 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 yeah.
Sure.
Though, really, in all of those, like that I have read, almost like most of them, I would say, like these isekai manga, they come there and they're usually, the nicest people. Like they love being like the benevolent person who just helps people out and be the hero. Like it's only really in Chinese series that you have like these arch sadists that just sort of like wants to take their anger out on other people and in the world. Because then it's like the hero is the guy who like kicks the shit out of someone who was rude to them, and all the girls swoon because they're so amazing. It's, oh, he has so much power, and it's sort of like, okay, yeah, like you guys have issues. Like the Japanese are usually, I think, like people who don't necessarily like. I think it goes sort of in the way that they just want to be appreciated. Like I think they are so taken for granted and just so spat at by like power figures that they just want to be the powerful person so that they can get respect. Like this is. I mean, there are of course. There are plenty of Japanese assholes, but if we're talking like, if we're just doing like, as a culture of like, cultural export and just sort of like, what they're consuming, I have seen so much more Chinese sadism power fantasies than I have seen Japanese ones.
Okay.
Uh,
I,
like the Japanese ones exists, they do, and then it's like someone who has been trampled like a whole lot, like people have been sadists to them, and then they punch back. That happens, but way less, at least as far as I know, than Chinese.
okay. Okay.
I will say.
I corrected. I thought that
Hmm.
was that.
I think the toxic culture really just comes down to the separation of talking to a screen and talking to a person. And it's sort of that like anonymity, and you have like this safety that you won't really get hurt, and so people let that get out on other people regardless. And I think that's mostly, I mean, actually it's both male and female behavior, but specifically in games it's men
But there's
and
this
teenage boys.
understand. Then maybe it's because I'm so you go out and you're being mean, and the only thing that has to happen in my world is for someone to turn the tables on you and squash you when you have low level, for you to realize that this is not too much fun. It's not fun to
Oh
be
yeah, yeah, no, no, because you're a good person.
and be squashed. That's not
uh
so.
what will happen, what will happen in like a like normie person, or I would say like especially like with the teenage boys who will usually engage in this behavior and the man children who engage in this behavior, like what you will get is they will get even more pissed off, and they will either have a personal vendetta against you where they will try to hunt you down and do whatever they can to like hurt you so that they will feel like they win because this is the only place where they're powerful. And then so either that or they will just bully a lot more level ones even more just to feel powerful, because it's like this is people with like low grade psychopathy, like that's the thing. Like trolls, internet trolls are people with varying levels of actual sociopathic or psychopathic traits. uh, and that's like, I think there's studies behind this, like when they, to the extent that they could look it up. And of course, there are more or less normal people, but they're like, insecure teenage dudes mostly, I think. So yeah, it's because you're a good person that you could feel this way, I think.
I don't understand. I literally don't understand.
I only do so on a, like, okay, fine type of level. I don't do that myself. Like I am notoriously way too nice. Like I can't even be rude to NPCs. Like I hate it. It hurts me to be mean to NPCs. So
No,
like,
no, but it's terrible. I mean, I've done some horrible things in games sometimes just to get the trophy,
mm,
and I I have to.
well, your priorities are clear.
Well, the platinum trumps everything. Say I, who don't have a single one.
I
But
don't see no trophy in this hand. Mm,
no, but I
yeah,
don't do
go.
any of the multiplayer stuff because
Mm,
the last thing I want is for some asshole to come and ruin everything for me just because they
yeah,
can.
yeah.
So I never get the multiplayer trophies. I get the trophy in my heart. I get the
Mm,
platinum in my heart, which is getting all the platinums that I physically can get. Not platinums,
yeah.
trophies. You know, that does not amount to a platinum, but I try. And
So
yeah,
so really just like what I really wanted to do, like with the game in
yeah,
general,
you're back on.
was yes exactly. Like I've been trying to lead it back, but I'm this kind of annoying person that rather than just talking about what's at the core, I take a concept and I lead it towards it, and then like just as I'm about to hit it, I and then I go and I try I do this like flower pattern like a mandala until I go to the center. Uh,
That. We need an
hmm?
animation of you trying to get to the subject, but then go.
Oh, whoa, 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 there's this thing too. Anyway, uh,
Gonna listen. Your idea, just the elevator pitch. Go.
yes, I want NPCs that are given so much more meat. Like one of my favorite game genres I'm realizing is like dating sims with plot, because like with gameplay especially, so it feels like you're always interacting because there. Geez, I went back to an old PS2 game, emulated of course because I'm a pirate scum. Uh,
Say that out loud. I have to edit it.
Sure. Uh, anyway, I went back to an old PS2 game. It's called like Sakura Wars something something, and it's like, it's not filled with all this like sexual shit. It's really just like it's a social sim where you're like talk to the NPCs, and they have this like how do you say you can't just sit for 5 minutes and decide what to pick. Like you have to pick one out of three things within like 7 seconds or so, and it will just be this like feeling like you're actually talking to them and like conversation paths. If you don't say one of the things, you will not have the follow-up. Like it's not all just the thing where it's like everything just leads in and it's fake choice. Like a lot of the time, like you make decisions just sort of based on like one of the characters goes with you to the park, and depending on how you interact with them, there was this one scene, for example, where you're like depending on if you look at a girl's eyes or like her hair or like her clothes or like at the park, all of those will lead to different conversation things. Like you have five available ones, but you can actually only get two. uh yes.
Are you talking about something that exists or
Yes,
that you want to make?
this is something that exists, and I really liked it. So I
Okay.
wanted to say make more in that sort of vein,
Yeah.
where you actually have characters, and in general, just make sure that the viewer or like the player knows that I have only experienced about 20% of what I can do with this character. Like if you get this feeling that there's more to it, that is enormous, because you lose this sort of like interest and love for a character the second you run out of dialogue options.
Yeah.
So the best way to do that then, I would say, is keep it alive by making it so that if you say one thing, you can't really go back and just take that other path. Like,
You have to
make it at least so. that they will be referential into themselves. And yes, I would say take away a lot of like the other fluff out there. Like on the whole, people like me really, really want like that social aspect with the characters, where it really feels like it makes a difference what I say and what I do and how I treat them. Like, don't give them to me on a silver platter. And also, like,
Work for it.
yeah, let me work for it. Like, let me work for it with them and also prove myself in like the games community, so to say. Like, I don't need like 200 nameless NPCs that will say like, "Oh, the bandits are coming." Like, I don't need that. Like, focus on like maybe seven, like really, really fleshed out ones, and make me feel like there's so much more to it. Like, give them depth.
Yeah, but
Make them not super easy to understand. But like when you then go back and you understand their point of view, then it will, yeah. Like there's such an untapped.
like people, like they don't fold over immediately first
Hmm?
you say something to them.
Yeah, it's like, hey, why are you a soldier? Well, my dad died when I was, when I was 7, and I felt like, oh, I had to avenge my family. Most people won't just say that. Like, yeah,
You have to build some trust first before getting
yeah,
everything about them. I mean, nobody in real life is going to tell you their life story just for you buying a beer from them.
right? And it's like, yeah, they don't have to be an absolute asshole to you when you meet, but if you ask like really two piercing questions, like they should actually be allowed to be a little bit mad at you. Like, hey, what the fuck are you doing? And just like, the question itself isn't, sorry, the audio cut out.
I just said none of your flippin' business. Now,
Yes, exactly.
if you want to do these 20 fetch quests for me, on the other hand,
Yeah, like if you can collect me 15 bear rectums, I will think about it.
yeah, or might not force things like in the Bible. I was going to say about the game that must not be mentioned that teased with having 4 different paths to go all the time.
Mhm.
As it turns out, they were all false choices.
Yeah,
The
I
previous
hate false choices.
the previous 3 games have had 2 paths that you could go down. And if you consistently chose one or the other, you would get different outcomes in situations, which made the game very funny to play again and again and again. And you didn't want to
Hmm.
give a copy away because you wanted all the possibilities and both endings or all the endings. And there were sections of the game where I couldn't play the game in my heart because I wanted the special ending where I literally had to sit on my hands in order not to do the quick time events that would
Hmm.
put me on the wrong path again. And then the follow up game that must not be mentioned promised to have 4 paths and turned out
Hmm.
to have none. So it was worse.
It was a railroad with a couple different shining lights. Like, oh, look at the flower.
Yeah, there
Well,
was
they.
literally just one path and what seemed like choice on the way.
Hmm.
Absolutely sucked. And the story was also full of so many plot holes that it was actually
Oh,
4
sure.
stories at the same time that didn't really work together. So no, that sucks. But I do like your NPC idea. So
Yeah.
that was the only kind of idea you had. It's
Well,
not a game yet.
it's not a full game yet. I came up with this yesterday,
Okay, well,
so
we'll talk about it more.
it's a work in progress mentally. Like if I had to plot it out or something, I think this is just sort of like, as of now, it's mostly just the thing of like, hey, quality over quantity, please.
That is the name of this episode.
Sure. Actually, really, yeah. Uh, I desperately need to pee. so, så depending on how you want to take this, antingen kan vi frysa eller så